Hi everyone, Tim the Plane Man here, and welcome to Arduplane PixRacer Bixinator edition. So what we have here is PixRacer Ardupilot set up in this Bixler 2 that I picked up off Craigslist. The plane itself is not really that special. What's special is this. Now, for those of you who've been watching up to now, you will have seen how I figured out how to connect the PixRacer, how to get it all working so that I can put it in the plane. That's in a series of videos that I'll link to. It's called 3 Days of the PixRacer. And for those of you with a little bit of history, you may realize, maybe not, that what I'm talking about is kind of an analogy with 3 Days of the Condor, the Robert Redford movie. So I spent 3 days figuring out how to connect and wire up the PixRacer so that it would work. And you can see that whole setup in that video. And this is the rig. This is how everything comes together. And what now I've done is I've taken this rig and I've shrunk it down by basically just moving all of the wires and everything that I had on the rig, and here it is in the Bixinator. And obviously the reason why I call it the Bixinator is because, well, doesn't that look a little bit like the Terminator from the Terminator movies? That's what I think of when I see this, and you'll see even more when I plug it in, and I'm going to do that now. So what I'll do is I'll just plug in my battery inside, and maybe I'll just talk quickly about
telemetry recovered.
What's inside. So what I have inside here is mostly the existing electronics from the plane, plus there's the PW02 power module that came with the PixRacer, and that's mounted inside here, basically between the battery, the power module, and then the ESC, and the ESC basically just drives the motor, so that's all pretty standard. Nothing special in here. What's really special about this is that, you can see all the wires actually run up here and run into the side of the canopy. And so I built everything around the flight controller, except for the GPS module here, into what's inside the canopy here, so that I can see it. Part of the problem I've had with all of the information about setting this stuff up is you put this in, bury this inside the plane, and you can't see what's going on. Most importantly, you can't see the LEDs. Well, now I can see the LEDs, and this is, now it really looks like a Terminator, doesn't it? With the red LEDs, just like that blinking red Terminator, the eye on the Terminator after, wasn't it the fire in the movie when all the flesh got burned off the Terminator robot? And there you go. You've got we've got a Bixinator. So everything you can see here was laid out on that original board. You've got the PixRacer itself with the Wi-Fi module. You've got the safety switch here. You've got the receiver. You've got the power line running from the side of the plane down to the power module, and you've got the servo wires again running down the side and connecting to the servos for the ailerons, the elevator, and the rudder. So and then you've got, of course, the GPS module plugged in here at the front of the plane. So if right now you can see I've got everything running on mission control, the brand new build of mission control that the guys have been working on, Michael Oborn and the team, and the new version is really a step up. There's a couple of things that I love about it. In particular, there's now a proper installer. So this is version build 468 of the Mac version of Mission Planner, and I just downloaded the latest build from GitHub and installed that. So this plane is basically ready to fly, and before I fly it, I want to just do a final check of the flight controller in particular to make sure everything's good. What I'm most worried about is that the control surfaces for the flight controller are all working in the right direction. So what's really interesting about this is that there's you know, if you haven't heard about it, Arduplane has an amazing wiki with some really comprehensive documentation about almost anything relating to Arduplane and the PixRacer. And here is, in particular, a web page that is part of the Arduplane documentation that has a complete set of instructions about how to verify that the setup is right. It's kind of buried though. It's in a web page called 4-channel planes under docs, setup for plane, plane configuration, choosing servo functions, 4-channel planes. And you might not even think that that's going to help you check it, but actually it's after it talks at the front about how to set up your servos, then it talks about the next step is to correct the servo reversals. And this is about making sure that when you control the plane from the transmitter, everything works correctly as you normally do. When you fly your plane, the first thing you do is you go and make sure, you know, ailerons are working the right way, elevators working the right way, rudders are working the right way. And then the next step is to make sure the flight controller has everything set up and working in the correct direction too. And this set of instructions, recently updated on GitHub, is very, very clear and complete. So I'm just going to follow this through step by step. So I'll move the instructions back out of the frame, because I'll actually focus on what shows up on the flight controller on Mission Planner. But I'll have this on my other screen, and that's what I'm going to be working through. So I'll put that in the link, and you'll be able to use the same set of instructions that I'm using if you want to set up not just a PixRacer, any Arduplane flight controller set up in a plane with a pretty standard 4-channel setup. You should be able to follow through this set of instructions and make sure that everything's working right. And I'm literally going to, although I've read this before, I'm going to painstakingly follow through step by step setting this up so that when I get to the field later on today, everything's good. Now straight away I see a problem, which is that we have to fix, because what happened is when I plugged the battery in, if you saw, the canopy was on its side. I plugged the battery in, and the plane has calibrated itself, as you can see on the Mission Planner screen. Now it thinks the plane is flying sideways. I have to fix that, and what I'm going to have to do is unplug the power and fix that better. I'm starting to think that it might be a good idea to put a switch because of this. It seems like a wonderful idea to have the canopy containing all the flight controller and the electronics, but what it means is when I plug in the battery, the flight controller isn't oriented correctly, and it likes to do that when you first plug it in. So what I have to do is very quickly orient that and make sure the plane is set up straight. Alright, so now what we do is we connect to the Wi-Fi module on the plane. So what I'll do is I'll just go to my Mac and connect to the PixRacer Wi-Fi that I see. And as soon as I do that, Mission Planner will notice that there's a PixRacer. As you can see in the stats, there it's just picked it up. It's connected to a fixed wing, and there we go. First of all, it's straight away oriented level. Now it's saying pre-arm roll is not neutral. I'm not, it looks to me like it might be just one of those, because now if I get it zeroed, I think it's zeroed. It says it's not neutral. I don't know, it seems to be neutral. I'm going to figure that one out next. So what I'll do is I'll follow the instructions. So connect the battery with the propeller removed. I've got the propeller on. I've got the transmitter running, and I switched to fly-by-wire A mode. Well, as you can see, I'm in fly-by-wire A mode, so that's good. We use fly-by-wire A for setup because it prevents double reversing inputs. And by the way, because I haven't armed the plane, the propeller and the motor shouldn't come on. I think we should be fine there. Now what we're going to have to do, because right now nothing works, the servos don't run. We've got our little safety switch here. Enable the safety switch, and now we have control. So when the plane is level, the servos should be near their trim neutral values, which they seem to be. I'm just looking at the plane here, and I think you can see at least some of the plane in the shot. Let me just maybe try to move that a little bit so that you can see it. And what we want to do is make sure that when the plane is level, that all of the controls, the rudder is straight, the elevator is, you know, just a touch up. That's what the Bixler needs, and the ailerons are level. Now if I tip the plane, you should see that things move. But when it's flat, then everything's straight and stable, so we're good. So that's the next step. All right, and leaving the transmitter stick centered, which is what I have. So if I try to hold the plane level while I'm doing this, so I move the plane and leave the transmitter stick centered, which is what I've just done, while monitoring the control surfaces to determine if the reversals are correct. Okay, so this is now, we're going to check the plane knows what is going on with the control surfaces first. Before you do the transmitter, get the flight controller to make sure it knows what's going on. So if I roll the plane to the right, and I have to, you know, this is around, I have to think about it the other way around. If I roll the plane to the right, the left aileron should move up and the right aileron should move down. So the left aileron, so this one over here has moved up, and the right aileron has moved down. Now if I roll the plane to the left, now the left aileron moves down, which it has, and the right aileron moves up. And I'm just following through the steps on the page. So there we go. Now I'm going to pitch the plane up. So when I pitch the plane up, the elevator moves down. When I pitch the plane down, the elevator moves up. When I pitch the plane down, the elevator moves up. When I pitch the plane down, the elevator moves up. And I'm going to go the other way now. When I pitch the plane up, the elevator moves down. So the elevator is trying to counteract what the plane is doing to basically give level flight. So now, if I, let's check the rudder. When I roll the plane to the right, the rudder moves to the left. When I move the plane to the right, the rudder should go the other way. That doesn't seem like it's doing the right thing. Okay, the rudder's doing the wrong thing. Okay, I'm going to look at it from here. When I pitch the plane to the right, the rudder is moving to the right. When I pitch the plane to the left, the rudder is moving to the left. Okay, so what we found right there is that the rudder is wrong, and the ailerons and the elevator are perfect, but the rudder is not correct. So what I need to do now is go into the servo reversed setting, and that would be for servo function 31, so servo's function, servo 04, AETR, A ailerons, 1 ailerons, 2 elevator, 3 throttle, 4 rudder. So rudder is not right, and rudder needs to be reversed. So now what I'll do, and this is trying to figure out, I remember where this setup is in the configuration. I think it's in the config option. Let's just go there and see if I can remember where to find this stuff. It's actually quite confusing, the user interface. When I go to configuration, it takes a little bit. So standard parameters, and what I need to look for is, let's try servo R4 reversed. No, I beg your pardon. It's, see, Servo 4 reverse. There's no 04. Oh, there we go. Found it. Okay. Well, that was a bit of a journey. So now I want to reverse this. So again, I get this weird behavior on the Mac where if I click on the field, pops up the entire screen to just type in the 01 value, and it's a Boolean, so I'm not sure why I can't just select true or false instead of putting in 0 or 1. But okay, so now it says 0 is normal, 1 is reverse. So I've now reversed that. So I think I have to write the parameters. So I'll do that. Parameter successfully saved. So now I should find that the rudder is working properly. So now if I roll to the, let's go back to the, so if I roll the plane to the right, then the rudder moves to the left. Skip this a bit. Roll the plane to the right, the rudder, there we go, much better. Now if I roll the plane to the left, the rudder moves to the right. Roll the plane to the right, the rudder moves to the left. Roll the plane to the left, the rudder moves to the right. Okay, so it's like magic when you get it right, and it works. So now we're good. So next, there are some notes about something called KFF rudder mix and KFF needing to be set to 0 for rudder setup. I'm not touching this, so let me just actually, now that I've figured out how I can find a parameter, which is you have to type in the whole thing correctly, and there doesn't seem to be a wildcard option. Okay, so if I type that in, there it is, KFFX rudder mix, the amount of rudder to add during aileron movement. So we've seen that before in the original 3 Days of the Condor video, which was when I'm in fly-by-wire A mode and I tell the plane to roll left or right, the rudder also mixes in a certain amount of rudder control, and this is what that's doing. So that's fine, and that's what we need, and that's what this is saying here, is to make sure that's not set to 0, it's not set to 0, it's set to 0.5, so we're fine. So now the plane knows what it's doing. Let's make sure the transmitter is also doing everything correctly. So here we've got my beautiful Eachine TX16S transmitter that I upgraded to from the Jumper T-Lite. I really like the Jumper T-Lite. It's much more smaller and comfortable to use, but for Ardupilot, Arduplane, it's just awesome to have this set of flight mode buttons, and that's just not easy to, you can do it, but it's not easy to set up on the Jumper T-Lite. So whereas these are purpose-built flight mode buttons, there's an awesome video from Painless 360 that shows you how to set up a curve so that you can get each one of these buttons to do different functions for Arduplane, and I'll put the link in for that. So there'll be a card linked into the video for getting to that Painless 360 video to show how to set up the buttons, which I've done already. So now let's go back and actually, since I digressed to that, let me just show you that. So right now we're in fly-by-wire A mode. If I press this button, I go to fly-by-wire B. This button goes to cruise. This button goes to loiter. This button goes to auto-tune. And this button goes to return to launch. And that I set in the configuration. That was basically, let me just see if I can find that again for you. So in flight modes. So it's in config and under flight modes. So here we go. This is where that corresponds to and maps to the output channels, and the output channels are basically, I think I've used channel, I think I need to confirm that which channel I used, but I basically mapped them here. So we've got the buttons, these buttons set to generate the correct outputs using the curve, and then in here I set which flight mode is being used. So I'm going to go back to fly-by-wire A, because that's what I should be using for this setup. And now let's check that the transmitter is doing what the transmitter needs to do. Okay, so confirm RC transmitter output. So here, if I do a roll right, the right aileron needs to move up and the left aileron needs to move down. This is the standard setting that you would normally do when checking your non-flight controlled radio control plane at the field. So here we go. So I roll to the right, and guess what? So we got a tiny little bit of up elevator on here, not a lot, and but it's there. And then if I move to the left, the other way around, I've got up on my left elevator and aileron, I beg your pardon, left aileron, and right and down on my right. So that's actually working correctly. If I pull back on my stick, the elevator should move up, which it does. If I pull back on my stick, the elevator should move up, which it does. And if I push on my stick, the elevator goes down, which it does. And then if I use my rudder, so if I go right, the rudder goes to the right. If I go left, the rudder goes to the left. That's perfect. So what it says, if that's not correct, you don't change it on the transmitter, you change it in the configuration settings, and it actually explains to you. In this case, it would be the RC channel number reversed. So for example, if let's say my rudder was reversed from the transmitter control, then I would go to RC4 underscore reversed, and I would change it there. So that's explained very clearly in the wiki page. And honestly, I wish there was a page on on Mission Planner where it basically said, here is all the parameters you need for setting up your servos. That would make a lot of sense to me, but maybe that's, I know that it's a volunteer team and they're doing a great job, so I shouldn't necessarily ask for things without maybe, for example, thinking about contributing myself, which maybe I'll do. So there we have it. This plane is now, I believe, let me just make sure. Okay, servo trim. So there's more. I'm not done. Servo trim. Switch to manual mode in order to adjust the servo trim values. The servo trim value is the servo trim parameter. So adjust the trim value so the servo is centered when the transmitter sticks are centered. Okay, so now I don't have a flight control mode set on the transmitter for manual mode. So you need to get into manual mode. If you have the transmitter set for manual mode, you can do it that way. Otherwise, what you do is you go into Mission Planner under Actions and select, and manual mode is the very first one, manual mode, and I'll go set mode. So now I'm in manual mode. Now it's the transmitter that's controlling the plane and nothing else. So if I want to set my trims, and in fact I've set my trims pretty well from a manual perspective, except for one thing, and that is that my rudder is no good. Now let's put this here. I think you can see that. Okay, you can see how the rudder is actually pointing to the left. Now it's suggesting that the rudder needs to be set to the right, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do that mechanically because it's so far out. It's actually out this way because I found, for whatever reason, that when I was flying the plane before I put the flight controller in, that it actually needed some fairly hard left rudder to fly straight. I'm not sure why. Maybe I've got my motor, I've got a little bit of left thrust in my motor, and maybe there's a little bit too much or something like that. But because this is telling me that it should be adjusted exactly, and that when the sticks are centered, that should be centered, and because that's such a difference, I'm just going to tune that mechanically, and I'll do that, and then I'll come back. And the servo throw, finally the servo throw. Okay, so let's do servo throw. So I'm going to come back, I'm going to adjust that. I'll do that after video, there's no need to do this. So the final thing we have to do is adjust the servo throw. So as you know, all of you probably know, if you have been doing this for a while or are getting into it, it's what's quite important is how much the throw is, how much those control surfaces are actually moving. And right now, you know, they actually move quite a lot when I'm in manual mode. When I was in fly-by-wire A mode, there's actually not a lot of throw there. And what it's saying is, check any instructions that came with the plane for suggested throws. These are specified in millimeters or inches of value. To adjust the throw, change the servo min and servo max parameters. And this is not clear, actually. I just wonder about this, because in the servo trim it says switch to manual mode. So now I'm in servo throw. I'm still in manual mode because that was the previous step of the instructions. But I think from what I'm seeing in manual mode, the throws are much higher than they are when I'm in fly-by-wire A. So watch this. This is manual mode. So when I move the ailerons all the way from one end to the other, you can see there's quite a lot of throw in those ailerons. All right, but if I switch to fly-by-wire A mode, and I'll do this using Mission Planner, and I'll set mode to fly-by-wire A. Now if I move my transmitter left and right, there's a very, you know, it's a fraction, I would say 30% of the amount of throw. Now I don't have any rate set on the transmitter. That's, you know, one of the things I understand about how this needs to work is that you let the flight controller do the work. So what I think I'm seeing is that maybe servo min and servo max are maybe need some work. And it says on many aircrafts more throw may be desired. Changing the throws to 1100 to 1000 to 1200, 2000 or beyond is normal. I kind of think that it actually needs more up. It seems to me there's not enough up. Somehow, especially on the right, on this right aileron, it's almost like the right aileron is moving more than the left one, and maybe that's why my rudder needed to be adjusted earlier. So I am going to give myself just a touch more max on the ailerons. I'm probably gonna make it 2000 as suggested, and let's just write that and see what happens. So now let's see. I'm getting a bit more up. Kind of like that I'm getting more up now, although I'm still not getting as much up on the left on this one as I'm getting on that one. So I'll look at the two mechanical things I want to check. One is I'm going to adjust the rudder to center it, and the second thing is I'm going to look at maybe if I've got any binding going on here with my just mechanical movement of the of that aileron, because it just doesn't seem, that right hand aileron just doesn't seem to move as much as the left hand one. But I'm a little happier with that being as a 2000 on the max. Now let me just see up versus down. I really think the elevator could do with some up as well, so I'm going to put a little bit of up into my Servo 2 trim. So Servo 2 max, and I'm going to make that 2000 as well. Set to 2000. That sounds alright. And so I've changed aileron and I've changed elevator, and let me see if I need to change rudder. See, I don't think I need to change rudder. Rudder's got plenty of throw, so that doesn't need to change. I'll leave that as it is. And obviously I need to test my center of gravity. I believe I have that set pretty much perfect for this plane, which is about where the servo wires feed out from the plane, and that balances fairly quite nicely and that is interestingly with the battery is very far back in the plane compared to how I used to fly. So I think that this is, with the GPS, has added a lot of weight, but it's okay, I can balance it. So just to point out that the GPS is here on the front. I did that so that I wouldn't have the GPS mounted here. Two reasons why I wouldn't want the GPS here. One is right below that is where the ESC is, and the second one is these wires leading from the ESC to the motor actually run right underneath there. So I would have the GPS right on a series on the magnetic field generated by these servo wires. So so I didn't put the GPS there. It's actually something where I'm thinking about maybe I might need to move the receiver, because I just realized that these ESC wires to the motor also run right behind where the receiver is here, so I might be thinking about moving the receiver too. So the last thing I want to show you is, just because, you know, I love this little canopy, my little Terminator canopy where I can see everything, and I've got my blinking light from the PixRacer controller here. But one thing I'm worried about with this is that the airflow, and in fact this is getting a little warm. What I do have is I put a I don't know if you can see that. I'll actually point that around here so you can have a look. Right here I put a hole in the front of the canopy, and then I put a hole in the back so that I can get some airflow through. But now that I can feel that, well, my GoPro decided it's too warm, and this is feeling a little bit warm, I'm going to power off. So we're done for now. Thanks for watching, and next step will be I'll do that mechanical tuning, and then I'll take this plane out to the field this afternoon, and I'm going to do a basic maiden flight in fly-by-wire A, just to make sure that everything's okay, and if not, to come back and see if I do need to do any tuning before I try my first ever waypoint mission, and I'm hoping that that's going to happen tomorrow. So thanks for watching, and stick around, because this video is not done. There's more. I will include footage from how this setup works when I throw it in the air.